Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to An Athlete's Journey. I'm your host, Travis Reed. Got a special guest here today. Pretty much a person that I've been knowing since I was a little kid. He was a coach of mine way back in the day when I was about 11, 12 years old, something like that. Also coached a lot of California legends, such as Paul Pierce, Baron Davis, Kevin Bradley, just to name a couple. Also Dino Tanner. I cannot shout out to Dino. A person, like I said, I got much respect for. And then, like I said, it was like integral in, my development as a player. I want to introduce Thad McGrew. How you
What's
doing,
up, Big
Thad?
Trav? Hey, Trav, I'm good. I'm good. How you doing, brother?
Good. Man, I was like, man, I got to get Thad on here, man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Thad remember me way back in the day. Like I said, I was like, man, I got to get his story, get everything going with him.
Right. I appreciate being on here, Travis, with you.
No, I appreciate you coming. We're gonna get right into it, Thad, man. We're not gonna go into your coaching just yet. We're gonna start with your own journey. How did you start playing sports? Was basketball your first choice?
So I grew up in Inglewood, California, and I played all the sports in Park and Rec. They have really Darby Park, Rogers Park. We had basketball, we had football, baseball. I played at Gettysfield when I was younger as well. Track and field as well. Ran for, I think it was whatever they called it back in the day, but I did all of that stuff as a youth. So, and then I played some when I was in high school. I played basketball and baseball in high school.
Okay. So you played both sports. Now, my question for you is, did you think that you were a little bit better in baseball, or you knew basketball was going to be your ticket?
So, sports wasn't going to be my ticket, period. Trav, I grew slower than everybody. I wasn't as fast as everybody, but I loved it, right? So I had a lot of friends in it, and I participated because of friendship. It created those bonds that, really are lasting friendships that I have to today. So it was really me learning more about sports while I played, getting a chance to have a relationship with really most of the coaches that I played under. And those are the things that really kind of inspired me to become a coach later on in life.
Okay. So when did you become a coach? When did your career end actually first, and then when did you start coaching?
So giving a shout out to you, UCLA Bruin. I'm a Bruin as well, right? So I went to UCLA out of high school, didn't play any sports in college. I actually worked for the athletic department during that time and got a chance to be around the basketball program a lot. And during my time while I was there, Walt Hazard was a head coach. I was pretty good friends with guys like Reggie Miller, actually roommates with Reggie Miller, Corey Gaines, Dave Immel. Became real good friends with Nigel McGill, who was a former UCLA Bruin as well. And just kind of became a sponge from just being around those guys, being around the basketball program, learning a lot about how organizationally the program was ran. And those are the things that really gave me the foundation, for how to run a program. So when I started, coaching AAU basketball, I already knew how I wanted to run it.
Okay, so that you didn't want to go into high school, high school, college, JC, or whatever the case is. You wanted to go straight into the AAU circuit.
So a funny story. I don't know if you remember a guy named Harold Jones, who I grew up across the street from. Shout out to Harold Jones.
Yeah, I remember Harold.
Right. So when I left UCLA, I remember my days of playing recreationally up at Darby and Rogers and Inglewood. So I did a couple seasons of just coaching the park and rec basketball. And I remember we used to always have to go through this trial process where everybody that signed up to play for the season had to do this tryout before we had a draft. And once we saw all the kids, we evaluated them, and then we went through the draft process. I always picked my roster, but then once the season started, a bunch of new kids started showing up on these other coaches' teams that weren't at the tryouts, right? And every year, the 2 years that I coached, I'll always have a team that was competitive, but we weren't better than the teams that had these kids that didn't come to tryouts, right? So
They was
Harold,
bringing in the ringers. They was
they were
bringing in the
bringing in the
ringers.
ringers, man. And I guarantee you, half those kids didn't even pay. They just knew that they were going to play because they were playing for their coaches, right? So Harold and I, we had connected, and we decided that we wanted to put an all-star team together out of Darby and Rogers, and that was like the kickoff, to me getting into club basketball.
Okay. Man, that's actually a pretty interesting story. I didn't even know that that's how it started. So you knew how did you get into like how did you get a sponsor and all that? For us people, who ain't coaches, how did you get into like being K-Swiss and how did that all come together?
So as a young man, finishing school, right? One of my first jobs out of college, I started working for K-Swiss, right?
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to get a job there. I worked for K-Swiss Corporate, and they were out of Pacoima, which is in San Fernando Valley. And at the time, they were sponsoring a program called the Cerritos Jaguars, right? So Harold and I, we were doing our thing, and we were playing against Izzy Washington. With shout out to Izzy, rest in peace, Slam and Jam. We were coaching against Rich Goldberg up in the Valley, ARC, right? Coaching against Pat Barrett, Southern California All Stars, and I think Nike was supporting one of those organizations at the time, and at one point in time they were supporting the ARC and Slam Jam at the same time. And then LA Gear was a big sponsor for some of those programs back in the day as well.
Right? ARC was for ARC. That's when I was there. They had the catapults, the Karl Malones.
Right. So being that I was a guy working in the office at K-Swiss, I knew that we had the ability to help because they had launched a basketball line of shoes, and I knew that we had an opportunity to really do a little bit more for the brand, to get it the exposure that they were looking for. So I was able to present them with a proposition that really led us to the process of getting a sponsorship for our program. So once that happened, that really helped to put K-Swiss on the map as far as basketball is concerned. And, most people that recognized us back in the day didn't even call us by our program name. They just called us K-Swiss.
No, yeah, definitely. I remember, like I said, when I first saw you, I was like, man, they got the all white K-Swiss, so sweet.
Right.
And then y'all had the sweatsuits. And at that time at Victoria Park, it was I was with my dad's team, the Boys and Girls Club team. So we saw y'all, we saw Slam and Jam, we saw Pat's team. It was a PTI, I think. We saw, Jason, Jerry Collins, ARC. And we were like, man, we just got the little boys club jerseys. How we get on with K-Swiss?
Well, when you were playing for the Boys and Girls Club, like we had our recognition as K-Swiss, Slam and Jam was Slam and Jam, ARC, so on and so forth. Your team was known as the Travis Reeds because, you're the only guy on the team. Everybody trying to take you from the Boys and Girls Club because, I don't know. I can't even name another player that was on your team. I just remember you. The TRs.
Well, I put like this. My dad was going to showcase me, make sure I was going to be the number one player on the team. Oh, and he's like, okay.
But he showcased you. He showcased you for the right reasons. I mean, you came out there. He coached you well. You had the skills that allowed him to put you out there to do your thing, and that's really what it's all about. I mean, when you look at a lot of these other programs, their dads that ran those programs really did the same thing with their kids because their kids had those similar abilities. And at that time, you were that guy for your team. So, your dad should be proud of what he had set in terms of the foundation for you.
Well, like I said, I appreciate it. I definitely tell him that he'll be watching the show for sure. So he'll be like, okay, Thad, appreciate it.
Yeah, shout out to Big Carl.
Now, my question for you is, what was the first year you actually started, like, coaching the K-Swiss team? How did it all come together?
So I started working for K-Swiss, I want to say back in 1990, I want to say. And I really didn't get my first sponsorship probably till around 1992.
Okay.
And at that time, that's when I was still with Harold. We were still doing our thing. We were called the Hawthorne Cougars at the time. And then Harold and I, we split, and we went our separate ways. So I went ahead and I recruited another coach, a good friend of mine named Mike Lewis, and then we started putting teams together. And I actually got a chance to meet Paul and Barron. They both were playing at the Inglewood YMCA. So that was my beginning of my journey towards recruiting. And they were like two of the first real guys that I recruited into my program.
Which is insane. I mean, basically, you think about your first two real guys, both end up being NBA all-star pros. I mean, I remember when, like I said, I first saw, you brought Barron to the club, Boys and Girls Club. He was like 5'2", a little guy.
Little dude.
little dude, but scoring all the buckets. Like, who is this little guy killing us? And I remember, and on the older team, Paul was the center. Paul Pierce was the center of the team, just going to work and just on post moves. And I was like,
Paul was a post moves guy.
He was post moves guy playing center, chubby, but just killing dudes in the post.
Right.
No, definitely. Yeah. So it started in 92. So that was, I think I was about 6th, 7th grade, something like that.
Right in that time period.
Yeah. So when you obviously started coaching, you coached both the older kids and the younger kids at the same time, correct?
In the beginning, I did. But because Mike and I, we became really tight and had a good rapport with each other. And Mike's son was in our program at the same time as well. So I just went ahead and relegated some authority to him to give him a chance to, to be his own guy as a coach. And he had the older team at the time, and I had the younger team. So he had Paul. Paul was a year ahead of Barron. So Paul ended up being on his team, and then Barron stayed on my team, the group that I had.
So how did you get everybody else to come with Barron? Was it just like when Barron came, everybody else came, or like did you go out and recruit just different guys from the neighborhood?
I was always recruiting, man. Always recruiting. So like I tell people, in fact, I talked to a parent the other day, and she reminded me of how I recruited her son. I think I was driving in the driving down some neighborhood. I don't remember what neighborhood it was. And I saw a kid dribbling the basketball, and I stopped and started talking to the kid. And she was like, "Who is this guy talking to my kid in the street?" But Travis, look, if I saw a kid that looked like he either had big feet, like he's gonna be tall with a tall parent, or looked like he had just some skill in the way he walked. I mean, look, everything was on the table for me to ask questions. So if I saw a kid by himself, I always would talk to him, but I would always get his phone number so I could talk to his parent, because I would never just leave it on me just interacting with kids without having their parents involved.
No, of course.
I mean, I would pick kids. I would talk to kids at the Fox Hill Mall. I was talking to kids in grocery stores. I would see kids wherever, right? And then for sure, if I'm in the gym at a tournament and I see a kid on another team and that team just got blown out by somebody, when they're in their worst moment, I'm gonna go talk to the kid and their parent.
Like, I can make you feel better. Come to my team. I got you. I respect that. I definitely agree with you on that. I mean, like I said, you was recruiting me when I was at the boys club first, before I even went to, ARC,
Right.
And so I actually thought that, like, I was gonna go to K-Swiss and just play with K-Swiss, because you had brought Barron to the club. I knew Barron and them already. So Pops was like, "Nah, we gonna put you with Jason and Jaren, on ARC." I was like, "Oh, okay."
I understood what your father was doing, right? Because your dad, he didn't want and I teased you about this other day. Okay, to me, you would have been Simmons before Ben Simmons, right? And people who don't know Ben Simmons' story, his dad would not let him play on any team when he was growing up down in Australia, if they wouldn't allow him to play out top with the basketball. So that was his prerequisite. And your dad had a similar understanding or idea and approach with you. He wanted to give you an opportunity to not just be a one-dimensional player, right? And that's why he took you to ARC, because they had guys bigger than you, which allowed you to play away from the basket.
Yeah, no, definitely. I didn't want to play in the post, and I knew that on K-Swiss I would get the ball a lot, because I had a great 1-2 punch of the funny thing is, like, I always call Barron and Bean like the Steph Curry and dang, I can't even think of the shoot Klay Thompson before of the little kids, because they was a
Right.
1-2 punch of them two.
They were.
You know what I'm saying? So like ARC was just like the you know, like the older kids that look at the same age. But yeah, you know, I always thought like I was gonna get the ball, but I was gonna have to play big. I was gonna play big man because the team was always a little bit little. But
Well, we weren't gonna put you in the post. I told your dad that I would give you an opportunity to be wherever we can use you, because I knew that you could do a number of different things. Obviously, defensively, we needed you around the basket, right? But on the offensive end, we'd have had some flexibility, and I had some other guys that I could have still played who didn't necessarily have the perimeter skills like you, who I could have put down around in the painted area and allowed you to still be on the perimeter, because you could have been at three. So it's been you, Bean, and Barron in the backcourt together.
Oh man, I'd have missed. That's what I'm saying. I had the side story. Everybody, like, I had a fun time. I was with ARC, and I think I was about to not even play with ARC. I was about to quit, and I went to the Arizona tournament with you guys. Had a blast. Was like, I'm ready to stay with K-Swiss. Even though we didn't win the tournament, like we came in third place or whatever. I was like, I'm about to stay. And then my pops made me go to the national, national ARC to the AAU.
Right.
And we went to the finals. And then I was like, maybe I'll stay. Maybe I'll stay with ARC for a little bit. And so, but I like I said, I have fun. Like, people don't know, Thad used to come to the boys club, talk to my dad for like hours, like, bring Trap, I'm telling you.
All the time.
All the time. All the time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but how long did you coach the AAU of K-Swiss? How long was that, you know, your time frame for that?
So AAU, well, I should say K-Swiss, that kind of ran its course. We probably had K-Swiss as part of our recognition for probably 5 years, right? And then I ended up leaving K-Swiss and started working for Nike. And then when I got to deal with, when I started working for Nike, I ended up getting support from Nike. And then we had Nike for probably about 3 or 4 years, somewhere in that time period. So, that's kind of how it worked for us.
Okay. So you went to Nike after about 5 years. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So are you currently coaching now, or are you just, you know, doing something different?
So I've been in baseball since 2007. Been working in baseball, and I am very interested in, at this particular point in time, looking at replicating something that I was successful at doing for basketball, and doing something similar in that area for baseball, and focusing on Black players, Black and American-born Hispanic players.
Well, like I said, that sounds cool. I remember we was talking about on the phone before. If you can get that, that'll be sweet, because I feel like, you know, they spread us out so thin nowadays, where it's, you know, 5 players here, 4 players here. If they could bring everybody all together into one big league, it'd be something crazy.
Right, you know? Right. Well, basketball is crazy in LA now.
Nah, it ain't what it was. I was telling somebody, my cousin, because he coaches high school. I was like, it ain't like it was what it used to be. It used to be competition. Like, it was the big 4. It was ARC, K-Swiss, Slammer Jam, PTI. Like the big 4. Like, and if you wasn't on these big 4, you wasn't top in the state. So. And they would never just mash us all up how they do it now, mash us all together on one team. For me, I wouldn't want to do that anyway. I'd rather go against, you know, some of the other players rather than you know, like everybody just mash on one team, you know.
Right. But, you know, if you look at LA basketball now, Southern California basketball, there's a travel team at every corner. Because every dad who has a kid, you know, wants to have a team, you know. And while I'm not mad at that process, because I think it gives a lot more kids just access to playing the sport, it's greatly diluted. It's greatly diluted. And you know, when you look at the tournaments now, and the locations where they host these tournaments, where they have hundreds of teams playing in one tournament over a weekend. That's pretty big. That's pretty big.
No, I would say like everybody kind of wants to go the Lonzo Ball, like the Ball family way, in a way, where the
Yeah.
dad just coached his sons in the AAU circuit. Like, I'm gonna just put a team together, let my sons do their thing, and that's it.
Right.
It's not necessarily like people all coming from the same neighborhood, or at least know each other, grow up with each other to play together.
Right. But it's cool.
Definitely.
I'm not mad at the process. Again, a lot more kids are playing basketball now. So, some kids that probably would have never had an opportunity to play high school basketball if it weren't for a club team that they were part of when they were younger. Can attribute that to their successful development, right? Being around some talented kids that influenced them to play and develop a certain way. It just really opened up just doors for that. And I just think that because kids aren't taking PE as a requirement in school now, so they got to get their athleticism somewhere. You know what I'm saying? They got to do something.
No, I agree with you. Right. So
Right.
we're gonna go a little bit back. That like we got to talk about the game, the one particular game that is in California or just high school history lore,
Okay.
where you was coaching Paul Pierce and them up in Vegas,
right?
And obviously Pat brought in Shea and Jelani McCoy and his team, and then all of a sudden you flew out the number one player in the country, and Kevin Garnett to play in the game. We got to talk about that. I mean, I ain't never seen so much hype around one game, just word of mouth hype, not like YouTube or anything like that. We got to talk about the game.
Well, I did have the pleasure back in the day of being able to put Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett together, right?
That was the beginning of the Celtics.
Right. That was a special and a unique union that was made. And Paul, to me, really helped to sell this process for me because he was playing well throughout his high school career. And I met Kevin and his mom at the Beach Ball Classic in South Carolina, Kevin's junior year, I believe it was. Yeah, his junior year. And I got a chance to talk to them a little bit about what their aspirations were. And I thought it was a good opportunity to have Kevin come out and to at least experience something different than where he was at, so that it gave him just a bigger vision of what the West Coast was all about. I know that he was talking about potentially leaving South Carolina anyway, so this was an opportunity for him to look at Southern California as an option for him to finish out his high school basketball career and finish out his high school. So it all kind of worked out. I talked to his mom very extensively. You know me. I mean, I'm going to talk to your parents until the parents say yes. You know what I'm saying? Just like I got your dad to say yes, finally, I got his mom to say yes. But it took a lot of negotiating, and I was able to pull it all together to put them together. And it was an experience. I mean, it was a great experience. It was one that I hadn't had before in terms of having a guy at Kevin's caliber, his caliber of talent, and he was a draw that one particular tournament, and I think he made that particular event even more popular than what it already was. And I think that after that, a lot of teams from outside of the West Coast were starting to look at it as another tournament that they could go to.
No, definitely. I remember, like I said, it was on the cover of the Street and Smith magazine. Jelani was shooting a hook shot, and they showed Kevin like all his whole arm above the rim blocking the shot. I said, "Oh man," you know what I'm saying? I remember that like it was yesterday, man. Like I said, like that's when Street and Smith was like Sports Illustrated for high school kids. You was on the cover of that. You was big time. You was big time.
Well, let me just add to what you just said about that one play, because there was a lot of memorable plays that Kevin by himself, left out there on the court for us to remember, right? But in that one particular instance, obviously Jelani McCoy was a big time player here on the West Coast. He was sent from San Diego, probably the best center in his class from from the West Coast. Went to UCLA, and had a good basketball career in his own right? So there was a lot of hype going to that game. and Jelani was supposed to be better than Kevin. He was supposed to be better than Kevin, right?
Right,
So
right.
on that one particular play that you talked about, I remember very like it was yesterday. Jelani made some kind of move and tried to jump hook Kevin. Kevin blocked the shot, and then it went back to Jelani. Jelani got in and made another move, tried to jump hook him again. Kevin blocked it out of bounds. And then he went up to Jelani and started yelling in his face, "Ah!" Right?
Yep, that sounds exactly like Kevin Garnett. It's exactly like Kevin Garnett.
Yeah, so Jelani turned and tried to walk away. Kevin walked back into his face again. Ah! I did it twice.
I'm not surprised. Like I said, that was Kevin Garnett, folks. People wonder, like, he's been like that since he was a high school kid. I watched him play growing up. He was always intense, always hard, just intense dude.
Right.
All right, Thad, man. Well, like I said, I appreciate you coming on here, Thad. Like, I wanted to get, like, your perspective on, like, how you see talent, how you bring talent together. As far as how do you recruit talent, like, I don't think this is like that as much as nowadays as it was back then, where you would bring kids together, and bring kids together, like for one goal to try to win games and just have fun. Man, like I said, I miss those days. I ain't gonna lie, them AAU days, I miss those days.
Right. Well, I could just say this much right here. My experience at UCLA, it really gave me the idea of what I wanted to look at when I put a group out on the floor. So I wanted to have back then in the day, traditional teams had size and they had skill, right? So you have a couple size guys, then you gotta have a couple of perimeter skill guys. So that's what I looked at every time I tried to put teams together. So every unit that I recruited, I know I didn't have the biggest guy every year, but I always tried to look for what would help me to be able to put something out there that looked like it was a real basketball team, and no matter what age it was. So that's what I did. That's what I did. And I was fortunate enough, most often than not, to be able to get guys that have size, that have some pretty good skill set, right? And then I was able to find really good perimeter players. So it wasn't really too many teams that I had where we never really just had an opportunity to compete, no matter who we played against. So, that unit, the age group that you had, there was a lot of special players in that age group. I mean, you talk about the Baron Davises. Baron was obviously the guard that made it out of that group, right? But if you don't, if you think about like the Kenny Bruners that was around, the Kevin Augustines, what's the name of the guard that played with you at ARC? I forget.
Isaiah Thomas.
He was good, right?
Yeah.
All those little guys were good.
Yeah.
Mike McDonald. All those players are really good, man. Really good.
That's why I remember, like, the competition of that '97 class was crazy. Like you said, Barron and Bean on one team. He had me, Jason, and Jaron
Kevin
on
probably
another.
too. I'm sorry.
Bean too. That's what I say. Yeah. Shout out to Bean.
Dino Tanner, right?
Yeah.
One.
The '97 class was just crazy, littered with talent. Littered with talent. And
all those guys. And you think about it, all those guys won at their high schools. They all won at their high schools.
Yep. They sure did. So, it was all crazy. It was, like I said, it was all crazy. Bean won at Crenshaw, Barron won at Crossroads.
Right. Dino won at Inglewood.
Dino won at Inglewood. Jason and Jaron won at Harvard Westlake. Kenny won at Dominguez.
Right. They were good players, man.
You say you're gonna bring up Jason and Jaron now?
No, don't bring them up, man. Hey, I got you. That's the reason why I couldn't get you.
No, I agree with you on that.
They were good, though. I'm gonna give them all the, I give them respect too, man. Their dad and Ron Quarterman did a great job with them, man. Great players. Definitely. Great family upbringing. So good players. So
definitely. It was, like I said, North Hollywood was far from where I was living. Right. Where you were, I was much closer, but Pops and Moms made that sacrifice to drive me way out to North Hollywood High School to go to these games.
That was a business decision.
Exactly, Dad. Exactly, man. Business decision. Well, like I
Right.
said, Dad, thank you so much for coming on here, man. I know you're a busy man. I appreciate you coming on. Um,
Anytime.
like I said, you're gonna bring you on again. We gotta talk the stories of the old hooping, man. Because I know you just
Okay.
seen a lot. You know what I'm saying? I just seen a lot. So yeah, I would love
Right.
love for you to come back on here, man.
No, I would love to, man. And I just want to say I'm proud of you, man, of what you've accomplished in your younger years of playing hoops, what you accomplished as a professional playing abroad, and just kind of bringing that experience back, man, because, you know, everything that you are able to gather and to be able to give back to people that are younger than you, man, that's a blessing because, everybody needs to, learn from somebody who's been there before. So, I appreciate what you've done, proud of what you're doing, and looking forward to seeing you continue to do big things, Trav.
Well, I appreciate it, Thad. Like I said, I really do. And like I said, y'all, I've been on Thad since I was like 11 years old, man. And and he's the one that basically, first dude to recruit me to AAU. I don't even know. I might have been still with my dad if Thad didn't start it, set it off. So, like I said, I
All right.
appreciate you, Thad. Appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we got to get you back on again.
Anytime, Travis, anytime. Looking
All
forward
right.
to it. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Peace.